Welcome, my fellow nerds, back to Nerd In for another episode of Totally Bored. I'm Christian, and I'll be your host for the evening, and tonight, we're going to be setting sail yet again. So today's board game review is going to be covering Ostia. So how this is going to work is I'm going to go through just an overview of the game that's not going to include all the details for how to play, but it'll give you a good sense of what's going on here. And then we're going to talk about the things I don't like about this game and move on to the things that I do like. So to get started with the game overview, Ostia is an action selection game based off of a Mancala style effect. Meaning that you're going to have a player board down here with ships that you're going to be moving Mancala style, dropping one at a time until you run out of ships, and then the last space that you're on dictates your turn. So this is a little bit different than some of the Mancala effects that are out there. This is a game inspired, or this is a mechanism at least inspired by Trajan, if you're familiar with that system. This one is very fun in the way that it works. So how your turn goes is you are going to choose a position on your player board out of these 6 slots. You count how many boats are in that spot when you select it, and you're going to take that many resource cubes from the supply and add it to that location, giving you more of that resource. There's 5 different resource locations, and then one that is not going to give you anything when you activate it. So once you get those resources for the amount of boats that you have there, you pick up those boats and then, like I said, deliver them Mancala style. The space that I selected has 2, so I'll drop one in the space right after it, and then go down one more clockwise to land on where my action is going to be. Wherever my boat lands, that is the action that I get for the turn. If I don't have enough resources to go through with the action, or I just don't want to do it, I can choose to skip it. There is a couple of actions that you can take for free or be very cheap, but most of them you're going to need enough resources to be able to take that action. The actions that you can land on, the first one is moving on the main board with your Corbita ship tokens to advance further along the map and get more resources out of it. The second one is building more ships so you can add more to your board here so that you can gather more resources and move further along. The third one is purchasing order cards. If you have the resources, you can purchase order cards from what is available. The fourth one is building, well, just building. You get to take one of your building tokens and place it on a spot that's available. Not too hard. And the fifth action is trading, which means you can go to market and trade off the gold that you have for resources depending on what locations you have available. Or there's other things that you could do during that action. Basically, it's just a purchasing phase where you can use the gold that you have available to buy either resources that you need or things like honor cards or other stuff that is available to you that gives you a ton of options. The sixth and final action when you land on it is essentially a wild action. When you land on this last space up here on your player board, then you can choose any other spot on your board that has a boat that is not the trade action. You get to take the action that you selected, move the boats that are on it, and then take the action that it lands on as well. So it's not going to give you any resources when you land on it or do anything else with it. It's just going to let you take multiple actions, which sometimes can be very, very beneficial and can help catapult you once you've built up the resources to do something with it. So if you had turns where you missed an action, you weren't able to take anything, you just had to gather resources, that gives you a chance to kind of catch up a little bit and get back onto it. So that's the main mechanism of how this thing works, is you are doing action selection and resource gathering via this Mancala style board here to be able to do everything else in the game. But what is the importance of doing everything else? Well, on the main board there is a rewards tracker up here, which is going to determine how many points basically that you're going to be getting at the end of the game. You'll see that for each building, ship, and amphora icon that you have available to you, and amphoras are things that are gained off of these order cards, we'll get more into those in a minute. For each of those, they'll be worth a certain point value based on how many rewards you have. And there's several different ways to earn rewards. The most you can get is 12, which will max out the amount of points each of those items is worth. But as you move up this rewards track, those items get more and more and more valuable, racking up your points very quickly. So that's the biggest essential in how you get more points, but there's other ways to do that, like getting into cities that will give you extra icons of a certain type. They'll make certain icons worth more victory points at the end of the game. And then, of course, if you get to the end of any of these tracks up here, they will also give you basically more points to work off of, or one that just straight up gives you more rewards to be able to climb up this track quicker. And the way you're getting these icons is by fulfilling order cards to get these Amphora tokens, which are just worth points on their own, and then building ships and buildings to reveal more ship and building icons on your sideboard over here, and that is how you add those up. Now, everything kind of revolves around each other in being able to actually progress through the game. For example, when you're building ships, you can build Corbita tokens, no problem, as long as you have the wood available to do so, and then you just take that token and put it anywhere you want on your board. But to build these bigger Ponta tokens, you need to first have all of the ships that are on your main board past this shoreline, this dotted line that's on the main board. Once all of your boats are past that line, then you're able to build a Ponta ship. If you want to try to build multiple at once, you have to make sure that every ship on the main board is past the shoreline, and then once you build a Ponta ship, it actually replaces one of the boats that's already on your player board and takes it over to the main board to give you more boats that can travel across, explore more cities, and get you more rewards. So, that being said, once you go to build your next Ponta token after that, your next Ponta ship, you need to have that new boat also pass the shoreline. Each time you come across a Ponta ship, you have to have your main board Corbita ship pass the offshore line. And so you have to keep track of it that way, so you're worrying about both of those actions. At the same time, when it comes to buildings, you can only build buildings to cities you've already been through. So again, your main board Corbita ship has to have moved through those cities in order to be able to actually place a building there and take one of the building tokens off of there and add it to your board, which also give you more rewards. Like, there's spots on here that will allow you to produce more goods. It'll make your gold more effective. It'll decrease the cost of doing certain things like building buildings or fulfilling order cards. And everything just really interconnects with each other. You can't really ignore one or two things and try to do the rest. You kind of have to do everything in tandem to make everything work, and it becomes a very deep efficiency puzzle. And when you're moving across the main board, you're spending these tickets, basically, or these permits, to be able to move further along, and you can split up the movement if you have multiple ships on there, but at the same time, you can also only go one direction at a time with a boat. So say I have a Corbita ship already on here, and I've started going down a path, I can't have it backtrack and go down another path. On the same token, though, if I get another ship on the main board, I can't go down the same path I already had that boat going down. I have to take one of the other 3 available paths, meaning that I can't just repeat my plays and get more good stuff out of it. I have to make a new plan, which is where, again, everything interconnects to be able to move more. Say, once you've got a ship at the end of a line down one path, you kind of want to keep exploring and getting more stuff out of it, so you're going to have to take the shipbuilding action to get more ships and be able to move along further and then build more buildings as you're going to get more benefits, and it's a lot. There is a lot to this game. It seems simple enough to play. The difficulty is in figuring out a master plan and making it work. This game will punish you for every small mistake at every turn, but it's fair in that regard because everyone else gets punished for those mistakes too. There's almost no perfect answer as to how you approach this game, but that's also the difficulty of it because there is never a clear answer. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place at just about every point. So the game end is going to be triggered in one of several ways here. The first is by a player getting to the top of the rewards track. If someone gets the 12th reward, the game ends immediately. The game will also end once the common supply of Amphora tokens has been emptied. You start off the game at setup with 7 for each player. So say I had 2 players, there's going to be 14 tokens in here. So if we ever exhaust those, then the game ends. And one player can take more than 7. If I'm just fulfilling a bunch of order cards and getting a bunch of Amphora tokens, I can run these dry completely by myself and be able to end the game that way. But again, there are some cases where you don't really want to end the game because you have something really tough that you're working on and you just need another couple turns to figure it out. But that teetering edge of the game ending is just right there the whole time. So to dig deeper into more of these actions a little bit, so with the moving the ship action, you can move a ship for free 1 space. If you want to move more than that, though, it's going to cost you 2 extra permits every time you want to move further. So to move 2 spaces, it's 2 permits. To move 3, it's 4. And basically for every 2 cubes that you put in, that is an extra space to move until you get up to 5 spaces. If you want to move 5 spaces, instead of costing 8 like you would expect it to, it now costs 10, so it jumped up 2 more cubes. And then if you want to move 6 spaces, it costs 15 permits. So if you somehow stockpile up 15 permits, you can really get cruising, but really the biggest bang for your buck is spending 6 for 4, because that still sticks at that 2 cubes for 1 extra space rule. Whereas if you try to get greedy and go above that, it's going to cost you extra. And again, with those movements, you can split them up if you have multiple ships on the board. Say I have a Corbita token that's just 1 space away from that last port, and I have enough to move 3 spaces, so I can move my other boat as well. I can take that last space with that first boat, and then use my last 2 moves on the other boat to be able to keep moving and get closer to getting offshore and being able to get another Ponta token. So when you're moving ships, where you land can give you different things. There's these hexagonal tiles that when you land on them, they will give you resources, not when you pass through them. But there are other tokens that when you pass through them, they will give you instant rewards. Like the one that I'm holding now will give me a horse icon to my set and 2 gold. And there are sets in this game that I'm going to get into later. But pretty much all of those bonus tokens will give 2 gold and then either 1 or 2 icons towards a set. And then the very last of those tokens towards the end of that line is going to give you an instant reward to allow you to move up the reward track. Each of these circular tokens are just once you pass through them, and they're only 1 time throughout the game. So if you are the first one to pass it, you take the token and it goes into your area. Nobody else can claim that. That is yours. And of course, there's city locations on here as well, which will allow you to place buildings on them once you have gotten to or past them. And there are 4 starter ones, which are these tan ones that you're going to place a building on one of them at the start of the game that will allow you to trade gold for different resources if you have a building token there. And there are several of these other ones too that are kind of almost this salmon-y color that will also have trades on them as well, where you can spend X amount of gold to get X amount of another resource. There's even one that I have on the board currently, because these are all random and you're going to be setting these up during each game and you can get different tiles. This one allows you to pay 4 gold to earn an extra reward on the reward track, and there's no limit on it as long as you have the gold to do it. And then there's other ones which will give you instant effects and some that will give you end of game effects. So for an instant effect, there's another one right here that once you place a building on it, it allows you to get 2 rewards instantly to keep moving up that reward track. An example of an end of game one that has the moon symbol on the bottom. This one will allow me to add 2 ship icons to my score at the end of the game. So when I'm looking at my rewards and adding up all of the ship icons that I have available, I get to add 2 extra to that, potentially scoring me upwards of 24 more points, which really adds up quick. And I'll cover more of that once I get to the building section. With the shipbuilding, you're just paying the cost associated with the boat on your sideboard here in terms of wood. Of course, if you have the -1 wood per boat building on your board, you can reduce that cost. You just keeping in mind that if you're going to build a Ponta ship, that all of your Corbita tokens on the main board need to be past the shoreline so that you can do that. But the benefit to these Ponta ships is that they count as 2 boats on your main board instead of 1. So when you're going to gather your resources from selecting that space, this ship is going to be worth 2 resources, whereas the Corbitas are only worth 1. So there is a big benefit to that, and then of course you can choose where you drop it off along the path that it's going, so that you can try to plan ahead for future turns. When fulfilling order cards, this action produces wheat, so you're going to be using that wheat to fill out these order cards, which have a cost associated in the top left of them. This one that I'm holding, for example, is 5 wheat, and then it has an option to also pay 2 stone along with it for bonus rewards, because in the top right, it shows 1 amphora token for completing the order, but it also shows a second, slightly less opaque one that if I pay the extra cost on this, I will get as well. So if I pay that extra 2 stone, instead of getting 1 amphora token, I will get 2. There is also bonus rewards listed on the main part and the bottom of this card. An example for this one, I would get 2 wood, and then I would also be adding a set, or a piece to a set of the man icon. I don't remember exactly what they're called, but there are sets in this game as well that you can collect of a man, a woman, and I believe a lion and a horse are the other one. If you get all 4 of those, for each set of those that you have at the end of the game is an extra 12 points. So they're not really something to ignore, but you also don't need to hyper-focus on them either, because you get the men and women off of the order cards. That's how you get those icons. And then on the main board, you can get the horse and the lion via these tokens as you're crossing them while you're moving around. And with orders, there's only ever going to be 4 out at a time. You can fulfill as many as you like when you're taking that action, provided you have the resources for it, but you can only do it out of those 4. You don't refresh the market of orders until you're done doing your action. So, say if I was able to complete 3 orders, I can only do the 3 of the 4 orders that are out, and then once I'm done, I refresh those. So order cards give you instant benefits, but also give you a little bit of progress towards set collection for the end of the game to score some bonus points, which is ultimately what the set collections are. They're just kind of bonuses from playing the game normally. You could try to gear towards them, but ultimately they're not going to be what wins you the game. You kind of have to focus on everything else and then use those as a good solid bonus. So with buildings, this is going to be kind of the same deal as ships, just works a little bit differently in when you can do them, but they do have a cost associated on the side of them as well, and you can build a building on any space that your Corbita ships on the main board have visited. So say I have my first ship and I decide to go through the first path past Caesarea there. If I go past that and I don't already have a building token there, if I land on the building action, I can spend 2 stones, since it's my first building, to be able to place one there and then take the building token off of that location. And now I can place it anywhere on my main board or my player board down here to give me bonuses. Like the one above the free action gives me an extra reward for the reward track. That's usually something better to claim at the end of the game, because a lot of the others of these are ongoing effects, whereas that is an instant effect. So the other good one to pick, maybe I can go to my trade action here and make it to where I can now trade 2 gold instead of 3 for any resource at any time. That is pretty much the only free action you have in the base game, is you can spend 3 gold to gain 1 of any other resource. But if I do this upgrade, then now it only takes 2 gold to be able to swap into another resource, making it much more effective and giving me a lot more flexibility in being able to manage everything else. Or I could even go for one of these in-between spots that allow me to produce either an extra stone and extra wheat, or I can go between the permits and the wood to produce an extra one of each of those, or even reduce the cost of certain things for the future. So every other space on here is an ongoing effect that goes until the end of the game. The one above the free action is just giving you a reward for the reward track, which is great for endgame. So you can plan around that and try to do that later on in the game once you've established kind of your main resource stuff down here. Or you can even just jump on it early to make sure that you have it. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But again, buildings can only be placed if you have enough stone for it, and if you have a location in which you have been through that has not had one of your tokens on it already. Any number of players can put their tokens on a single space. That's why there's 1 building for each player during setup, and so that every player can have a chance to put their building token on a location if they want, and everybody will have access to whatever that location gives you. It's not a first come, first serve. Anyone can go there and claim it. And next is the trade action, which, like I mentioned, there is the free action to, at any time, swap 3 gold for any one other resource. But there are other things you can do in this as well. Depending on what buildings you have in the different cities, you have more trade actions available. You start with 1 available at the beginning of the game when you place your first building token, or your first construction token, which will allow you to trade in a max number of times from 1 gold to another resource. But then as you're going, again, once you have placed buildings on places, those can open up more spots for markets. Not all of them are going to have trades to them. A good enough number of them do that they can be valuable. Like this one over here that will let me trade 2 gold for 3 bricks, a max of 4 times per action. So that can be really nice if I need a lot of stone to be able to get my buildings up and get them done. So I might want to try to put a building there. But again, that's the interconnectivity of all this, because I first have to travel there, I have to have enough stone to place a building there, and then I can take that action to trade for more stone and place more buildings later on. As well, during a trade action, you have the option to spend 4 gold to claim one of these honor cards over here, provided you meet the condition. For example, the one that I picked up, I have to have at least, or I have to be at least on space 5 of the rewards track or higher to be able to pick this card up for 4 gold. But if I do that, at the end of the game, that's worth an extra 12 points. There's only 5 of these honor cards in total, all with different goals on them. This one is being at the 5th space in the rewards track. There's one for having 4 ship icons, 4 amphora tokens, having 2 ships past the coastal line, and having 4 buildings. So if you achieve any of those and you take the trade action with 4 gold available, you can spend that 4 gold, pick up that honor card, and then that's just a free 12 VP at the end of the game, which is really nice. Again, with a set like the set collection, it's just an extra bonus, not necessarily something to focus on, but if you can end up getting through it with your normal gameplay, which you're likely going to do, you might as well pick it up while you have the chance, because it is just not necessarily free points, but it feels pretty free compared to everything else. Now, with the base game, that's already a lot. On top of that, you can add in the Pirates expansion, which now that I'm kind of digging into it, I think this is going to need a separate review all on itself, because it does add a good chunk to the game. So I'm going to review this expansion completely separately. I'm sorry to you guys right now. But it needs to be done, because there is just so much more to add over here on top of what is already here. So you reach the end game, you're looking at your total icons that you have, including any buildings that you may have put on the main board that would add to those, including extra points. You're adding everything up, and the point average, this is a very point salad-y game. You are going to have, you're going to have at least 100 points by the end of the game. Now, I mentioned earlier the end game triggers for multiplayer. This game does also have a solo mode, and in the multiplayer mode, it's just whoever has the most points wins. Well, in the solo mode, it's kind of like that too, except instead of most points wins, you just have different thresholds to give yourself different titles. No matter what, you're going to win the game in the solo mode, but there is a time gate in the solo mode that dictates the game's end for you. All of the endgame triggers in the base game are still there, but in the solo mode, they added an extra one that basically only gives you a total of 15 turns to work off of. And in that, I am talking about the Emperor board here. This has a track that at the start of every turn, you're moving the Emperor down 1 space. You can move it straight down or diagonally. And as you're moving along, it will give you extra resources depending on where you land. It's usually just a pair of any of the main resources on the board. And as you're going down, there's goals to meet at each turn that can give you extra VP at the end of the game. After the first 5 turns, you have your first goal, which is randomly dealt during setup. And then the same thing at the 10th turn of the game. Once you start those, if you've met either of those goals, there's 2 different stages to each one. If you meet the first one, you'll get 5 VP. If you manage to meet the first and the second one, that's an extra 10 VP for each of those tiles at the end of the game. As well, if you end the game before this gets down to the bottom, you will get an extra amount of VP dictated by what's on the side of the board here, depending on where you stopped. The most extra you can get is 80 because I guess you can never end the game before turn 6, which honestly makes sense. It's very difficult to even do it before 15 turns, unless you're just like a master whiz at this game, and I totally missed something. But as the Emperor is moving down, you're gaining extra resources to help propel you forward and kind of get you in the game a little bit more, let you speed through it a bit faster. There's a lot of times it doesn't feel like enough. I think I've only ever ended the game prematurely once, and I only got an extra 20 VP out of it because I ended it 2 turns early. That was it. It was not easy to do either, and I think that was one of my lower scoring games. But as well, once you get past that 10th turn and that second objective tile, then there's extra spaces down here with tiles that get shuffled around at the start of the game that give you even better rewards. There's one that allows you to build a ship or construct a building as soon as you reach it, provided you have the ability to do so. It just allows you to build one for free. There's 2 on there that give you rewards, and then one that gives you an Amphora token, which is just... no matter which way you swing it on those, it's insane, and you're basically guaranteed to get 2 of them if you plan it right, which... You should be looking ahead on there and deciding where you're going to move next to help what's going on. But the clock on the solo mode is just so rough. I've still scored over 200 points out of it. I think it was like 223 is my high score currently. But man, is it not easy. It is so not at all easy to do. And what's worse is that you don't get the honor cards in the solo game. These just gone. Throw them away. The honor cards don't exist. You can't buy those and get extra VP out of them. All of the objectives at the end of each of these lines are still here. So if you still get there, obviously you get the first reward off of them since you're the only player. You're not playing against a bot. You're just racing against the clock, which makes it so much more intense somehow. When you're doing a multiplayer game, everyone's going to be making mistakes and slipping up. So the game's going to keep going and going and going until someone finally gets that end game trigger and you feel like you still have a chance to catch up. In the solo mode, you don't get that opportunity because you see that clock racing down, and once it strikes 0, you're done. That's all you get. On the plus side with solo mode, though, that every time you collect one of those sets of icons, the lion, horse, man, and woman, once you get a set of all 4 of those, you instantly gain the benefit to gain a reward on the reward track. So you can progress up this a lot quicker if you... it's kind of a case where you almost have to dedicate to that a little more to start making your points more worthwhile so you can capitalize on the things you are able to achieve during those 15 turns, which is just such a tight window. It almost feels like it needs to be 20, and I can't blame them for making the decision to 15. I'm sure that has been well tested and decided on. It's a very well designed solo mode, and I very much appreciate it. But good God, is it tough. This is probably one of the toughest experiences I've had, and not for the sake of learning it, for the sake of actually playing it and trying to mastermind this ultimate strategy that I can't nail down. I just can't. And I know I'm already in review territory here, but it's so hard to talk about any aspect of this game without giving my thoughts on it immediately because it's just so intense and there's so much going on. It's just, wah! You know? That's all there is to it. So we're going to breathe. And we're just going to take a step back. This game, wow. So... to get into the actual review here, and I'll start with the cons, but I'm going to give a little backstory first. So when I purchased this game, I got it on Kickstarter because the Pirates expansion Kickstarter went live, and in there they gave people the opportunity to buy the base game as well for those that didn't have it. So of course I got both, because knowing that Ostia was a Mancala-style sea-based game, well, in the Roman Empire, but still sea-based, knowing that was enough to pull me in. I was hooked from that get-go. And I opened up the game. I got through the rulebook. I was so confused. I was so lost. Nothing made sense. And then I sat down and played a game of it, and everything just started clicking. It just was all adding up. It was all coming together. I was moving my ships around. I was seeing how everything interacted together and how everything is part of one giant puzzle, one string of things. It's like the big swamp tree from Avatar. Everything is so interconnected and interwoven that you can't skip one detail or you miss out on a whole experience. So in as far as things that I don't like about this game, I don't like how much attention it sucks from me. I can't stop thinking about this game. It's such a deep, delving experience. It's a simple looking game on the surface, and ultimately it's not actually hard to play. But good God, is it impossible to master. There is so many moving pieces going on here and so many things that it really pushes you to the limits and makes you think. Like, you get so invested in this. Every move feels so impactful, and not like any other board game where you can have a turn where you don't really do a whole lot or you make a mistake and it's not the end of the world. You can still recover from it. In Ostia, if you fall behind, you can make it up, but you're going to be working for it. You're going to be putting in the effort and pushing hard to make up for that mistake that you made. And wow, I don't even hate that it's a punishing game. It's well worth it in that regard. It's so well designed in that matter. It doesn't bother me. It's just a matter of visualizing how everything webs and weaves together and pulling all of these different strings to make certain things happen. It really is like you're operating a puppet, like an old string puppet with all of your different fingers to make this one thing move in unison in a cohesive way that actually makes active sense and does what it is out to achieve. Wow. Just wow. Like, I went into this review not intending for this at all, and I'm just going to tell you right now, none of these are scripted. None of these reviews, I hop into them and I talk about the game, and I'm not even playing it right now. I'm just explaining the game to you, and this is how intense I'm getting about it, because it is such a wild game. like I said, there's so much already in base Ostia, and it's not even a heavy game. It is like a good medium to medium heavyweight game. Definitely not something I would recommend to beginners, but for what this does, it scratches so many itches just perfectly that my one complaint about it is just null and void. Like, the fact that it demands so much attention is amazing. It's amongst all of the games I have in my collection, this one is one that pops up on my brain the most as something I keep coming back to, because even though I get through it, and I've mostly played solo so far, but even when I get through it and I feel like I've failed, I am so determined to go back in and do that much better next time as I keep playing and new things start clicking and making sense and adding up, and it just gets better with each playthrough because I'm discovering more about it. I'm discovering more about myself, and I feel like ever since I've gotten this game, I've thought so much clearer. I feel like I've become smarter again, and I'm literally at a loss for words on talking about this game. So in terms of cons, I don't have any. In terms of pros, it's everything, man. Everything is such a deliciously juicy decision. All of the components feel so nice. Everything just does such a great job of keeping me so engaged in the game. Like, normally when I'm playing board games solo, say it's a Friday and I don't have work, my wife is at work, I'm alone, I'm playing some board games, usually I turn on music or something in the background to have noise. With a game like this, I can't have anything else. All of my focus is on here. TV is off, phone is in pocket on silent. I am fully immersed whenever it comes to playing Ostia, and I know a lot of people probably won't feel the same way about it as I do. I am very intense about this game. So stepping back to kind of give it more an objective glance, the interconnectivity of everything could be really hard for a lot of people to kind of wrap their minds around. Someone that's looking for more of a cozy game or something that's simple enough to play and get to the table with other people that may be closer to non-gamers, like newer to the hobby, still kind of working on getting in. If that's the group you're playing for, this is not the game for you. If you're someone that's been in this hobby, that has other friends that are also involved in it, and they like bigger experiences like this, or even if you yourself are just a solo player that enjoys bigger experiences, Ostia is such a great game for that. It nails the experience so well. It's not like the most grueling experience ever. Everything flows and feels so nice as you're playing. Nothing seems out of place. It doesn't feel like there's any mechanisms that are just kind of there for fluff and don't really do anything. Everything serves its purpose and flows into that endgame goal. but also at the same time, the journey to get to that end game feels so smooth. Like in my Maple Valley review, I talked about that was a game, it just felt great to go through the journey. You didn't even have to worry about the end game scoring at all. For this, both experiences of the game are just incredible. As you're playing it is just, it's so in-depth. You're getting really into it. You're getting so sucked in. Like, I'm doing this review right now. I can't take my eyes off the board. I can't look at the camera because I'm just so locked in on the game. Everything just feels so good as you're playing, and then you get to the end game and you start adding up all these points and all these points, and it makes you feel so good that all of that effort that you put in during the game is paying off, and you're seeing all of it add up to the point where, like other games, you're not caring about anyone else's score. You're just caring about your own, because it is so satisfying to be that rewarded by a game. Like I said, I've only scored 223 points, I think, as my maximum for a solo game, but that felt so rewarding. It was better than what I had done before, and you hear 200 points in anything, and you're like, my god, that's insane. Like, most games I get don't usually get over 100, so to have a point salad like this that lets you get that high is just, oh, thank you, Ostia. Thank you to the designers. Wow. So now this game says that it plays 1 to 4 in about 100 to 120 minutes, so about 2 hours roughly. If you're playing with a group of 2 or more, I could definitely see that being the case. As far as a solo game, I can get one of these knocked out in a half hour to 45 minutes. So if you're a solo player, you can take that into account as well. It's probably about an hour or so in total, maybe like an hour and 20 minutes in total with setup and teardown and everything, but overall, the entire experience is just so worth it that it doesn't even matter. And if you already have it set up, you can just play another game back to back, so you get 2 games in the amount of time it takes to get one in with a group. So I sincerely, I genuinely am at such a loss for words at this game. It's not like the biggest eye catcher, it's not the best presentation of any board game ever, and it certainly doesn't seem like a lot on the surface, but it's one of those that once you play it, and then you play it again, you really see it. You might be fairly confused the first time around, but by that second play, everything just clicks immediately, and it all just starts to sync together and makes so much sense, and then it just flows perfectly. And then, like, in terms of a complex game that I've learned, this is the easiest one for me to have learned. I was very confused at first, but once again, once it started clicking, I haven't lost any of that. I have not had to go back to the rulebook to check stuff since the second time that I played this game. And that was just for like one quick refresher that I didn't really go over in my first game of it. And ever since then, like, I understand this game. I don't have to refer back to the rulebook. It just all makes so much sense. The Pirates expansion does change that a little bit. But, again, that's something we'll delve into on the separate review for that. And this gets a perfect 10 out of 10 for me. Like, this is probably going to be in my top 3 games for a good while. I know it wasn't that high on my list because at the time, I had only gotten through the second playthrough by that point. Maybe even only the first, actually, I think. I don't think I got my second one until after that top 10 list. And, yeah, that changed everything for me. Everything clicking together and making so much sense changed the game for me dramatically, and now it is within my top 3 games of all time. So that's all I got for today on the review for Ostia. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Hopefully this was still a helpful review. Hopefully my bias didn't take over too much. It's just a game that I love and that I wanted to share with you guys because I know it's not like the most talked about thing in the board gaming hobby. There are some that, you know, have gone around in circles with it, but it doesn't seem to be that popular, and I want to bring more attention to it because Ostia is such a beautiful game. But of course, as always with board games, test them out first. Watch my How to Save Money on Board Games video if you haven't already, just to make sure that you're not spending on something you don't want. Anyways, that is all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love having you guys here as always. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments if this review helped you, or if you've played Ostia before and you have your own thoughts on it, let me know what you think down there as well. I'm very curious to see what you guys think about this game if you have played it. And until next time, as always, guys, we hope you enjoy your stay, and we'll see you next video. Peace out.